All right. Good morning and welcome to the final conference that we are holding today as part of the HIBLend project, which stands for Enhancing the Quality of Blended Mobility in European Higher Education. So quite a mouthful of a title, as often these project titles are. I am Irina Ferenc, the director of the Academic Cooperation Association, or ACA in short, and it's my pleasure to welcome you on site this morning as well as online. And I will start by thanking you for making time to join us, either here in the room or via the internet, in what we know is a particularly busy time of the year where everybody is struggling to wrap up different tasks and be ready for the holidays. So we really appreciate you being with us today. And as a start, I want to acknowledge, obviously, that the work done in the HIBLend framework was obviously not only the work of us in the Academic Cooperation Association, but also the work with two other sister organizations and two higher education institutions in a very close partnership. And they are specifically the European University Foundation, or EUF, the NVAO, or the Accreditation Organization of the Netherlands and Flanders, as well as Masaryk University and Tampere University of Applied Sciences, or TAMK in short. They're luckily all here with us today, as well as several of the members of the External Advisory Board that supported us throughout the project lifetime. And we're really happy to be able to be sharing with you throughout the day some of the main outcomes, as well as critically discuss the implications of all these findings with very prominent colleagues from our field. In starting, maybe I can just say very quick words of why the interest of ACA in this topic, and particularly in the quality dimension of these, what we call the new mobility formats with digitally enhanced components. I think our internal discussion started on this topic sometime in 2021, and many of you will remember we were still during the pandemic years, so probably in the third round of lockdown in Belgium. And we were regularly meeting with our member organizations that are funding agencies of internationalization activities, including mobility. Many of them are also the Erasmus Plus national agencies in their respective countries. We were meeting in a framework of what we call a thematic peer group on digitalization. And then we started, I think, for the first time within our association, at least, to very strategically and in-depth discuss these emerging digitally enhanced mobility formats. And I have to say, at that time, our member organizations had many questions and many concerns, particularly related to ensuring the quality of the online component of these new formats. And again, because we were full into the pandemic years and we didn't quite know what the future will hold, imagining a full return to physical mobility formats seemed, to a certain extent, hard to imagine at that time. Our members were also very much concerned with what the future of funding programs for mobilities would look like, and also what should be really funded in the future, anticipating potentially also a shift from the traditional models of funding the grants of mobile students for physical mobilities to probably envisaging some kind of institutional funding support for the online components. So we had a lot of questions at the time, and it was still the early days also of the current Erasmus Plus program, when very prominent formats like the blended intensive programs were being launched. So this put us on this path of searching partners and trying to explore, map these fast evolving field, I would say, of what we now called the student blended mobilities. At the time, we still called them something like digital enhanced mobilities, new mobility formats. We weren't quite sure what to call them. So this is how the project idea really started, and we were lucky to find the partners that joined us in the end in this adventure and explore this topic in depth. What we've observed, I think, since at the policy level is obviously an increase in the prominence of these types of mobilities with a virtual component, be it in the form of the BIPs or in the form of virtual exchanges and shorter type of mobilities. And we clearly see this has been incentivized to a large extent by the funding available within the framework of the current Erasmus Plus program, but not only. Obviously, at the institutional level, the interest was not only fueled fueled by the availability of funding, but certainly also by the interest in expanding opportunities, particularly for students that might find typical mobility full of different obstacles or not necessarily accessible to them. And certainly from an academic perspective, these formats also gave an opportunity to experiment with new pedagogical approaches. I don't want to anticipate too much of the upcoming session, so I will maybe just say that we have built the program in such a way, or better said, my colleagues have built the program in such a way, because as you might know, often at these events, the person's getting to welcome the audience is often the person with a light involvement in the project. I have to say that is my case. But we are in good hands for the rest of the program. We have two presentations of some of the main outcomes of the project by my colleague Angelique Psychoyou, who is also the mastermind of the project on our side. She worked as project manager. And then by our colleagues from the European University Foundation, Salome Dermati and Deborah Luque, who will present with you in detail some of the findings. And then we have three successive panel discussions where we will explore the implications with colleagues from our field. So I think without further ado, I can already hand over the floor to Angelique for the first presentation. Thank you.
Hi everyone, good morning. Let me just try to set up the things here. We also have a tablet for the online participants. So, well, that should have been showing while Irina was speaking, but never mind. Okay, so welcome everyone. I'm very happy to have you here today. As you might see, we're a very intimate audience, but online we have around 200 people watching us. So that's scary enough when you do the presentation. So my name is Angelique Psychoyou. As Irina said, I work for the Academic Cooperation Association, and I'm very happy to take you through an overview of HIBLend project and what we have achieved over the past 3 years. So HIBLend has really been a truly collaborative European effort where we were dedicated to understand and improve student-blended mobility in higher education, how it works, what makes it successful, what makes it difficult as well, and how institutions can ensure its quality. In this presentation, I will share some key findings, and the lessons learned across our research and consultation with higher education institutions and other organizations in the field. So let me briefly introduce what is HIBLend. The project's aim was to foster high-quality student-blended mobility in higher education for students, as I said. So as blended mobility has become more prominent in the recent years, and especially with the rise of blended intensive programs, or BEEPs, under the Erasmus+, institutions have expressed a very strong need to have clear guidance and quality standards and practical tools in order to deliver student-blended mobility. We also call it SBM, so sometimes I might say SBM for faster. So HIBLend ran from 2023 in January until 2025 in December, and we have foreseen several activities for January and February as well as part of our sustainability, and my colleagues are going to reference on these later. One of the core objectives was to develop a comprehensive framework that universities can use to design, implement, and evaluate student-blended mobility activities in a consistent and meaningful way. So in other words, HIBLend, the idea behind HIBLend was to bring structure, evidence, and quality principles to an area that has been growing rapidly, but still lacks common standards among universities that are implementing it. So, Irina already mentioned the colleagues from our partner institutions, but very quickly I would like to mention that it was a diverse consortium. and this mix was intentional because blended mobility touches upon many different parts of the academic ecosystem, from teaching to curriculum design to administration, funding, and external quality assurance as well. So its partner contributed to unique expertise. So we had the universities that were implementing the student blended mobility activities. We had agencies that were experienced in accreditation and quality frameworks, and we held also networks like ACA and EUF that we support mobility, higher education institutions, and also our memberships with our national funding agencies for Erasmus Plus and internationalization of education in general. So this diversity basically allowed us to look at blended mobility from multiple perspectives and ensure that the final framework is both practical but also aligned with the European quality assurance framework standards. So, okay. These are our deliverables. I'm very happy for them. So across the 3 years of the HIBLend project, we followed a progression, a clear progression of how we reached the final point. First, we tried to map at least, it's not easy because it's an evolving concept, what student blended mobility is and how it is currently implemented across Europe. We looked at different formats, we looked at practices, at institutional models, and the diversity of approaches in the use of SBM today. Secondly, we decided with the next work package to try to gather what quality means for people and for all the stakeholders around student blended mobility. Students, the most important group, admittedly, teachers, administrators, quality assurance bodies, as well as funders on funding institutions. This helped us to try to understand the expectations as well as the challenges and success factors from every angle. And finally, the last one, the red here, which is something that we're very proud, is we took all of this evidence and we tried to develop a comprehensive ESG-aligned framework that institutions can use to design, as I said, implement and continually improve high-quality blended mobility. Before that, all of these you can find on the HIBLend website to download. We also have a digital version that my colleagues are going to present later. And the website is hiblend.eu, so it's very easy to access it. So, to better understand how we started, to better understand what blended mobility is actually and how it's being implemented, what we did, we started with a large data collection effort. We launched this survey that received a total of 224 responses, and after cleaning the data set, 194 responses were valid. And this came from 23 different countries all across the EU, giving us a truly EU perspective. Interestingly, most respondents, I don't think that you will find this interesting, but at that time it was interesting. Most respondents came from administrative staff, so who are deeply involved in the practical delivery and organization of these types of mobilities, and therefore had a lot to say about the challenges and opportunities. We also saw strong participation from smaller institutions. That means up to 5,000 students, which often face enough research constraints and problems, but they are highly engaged in these formats. Alongside the survey, we also conducted 3 online focus groups, an additional session during the EAE conference in 2023, and I see one participant from that session here today, who is also a speaker later on, and also 2 interactive sessions during the hackathons at the EUF Student Summit, and that was in 2024, yes. And this conversation basically helped us to dive deeper into the motivations, the expectations, the pain points, and they provided us as well with invaluable qualitative insights to complement our survey results. So, these are very small. It's okay, I'm gonna say like the highlights, and then I'm sure we can also try to send this presentation to all the participants after. It is very small, I'm really sorry for this. Okay, so some results about the motivation. So for academics, the motivation focused on the students and on providing opportunities for them. While for admins, it was more of a strategic decision in terms of internationalization, to say it bluntly, there was funding, so it was good to use. Other responses included to stabilize mobility activity numbers following the COVID-19 situation when we were trying to get back in our numbers, and response also to interest in the initiative from academics. And it was also, another response was it was used as a springboard for longer term mobility. That is, of course, to be decided. There needs to be research in this field to see if it does indeed SBM leads to long-term mobility. Some other responses was requested by partners, so that's how some universities were involved. And then another interesting answer was to offer opportunities to students that were working and were now not available otherwise for a longer term mobility. Okay. So, for the order of the student blended mobility components, as you can see in the graph, don't know if you can see in the graph, most of the respondents indicated that the physical component took part or takes part after the online. So we start with online first. But also some people responded that there was an online component both prior and after the physical components. Something else of interest was that the most common duration of the online component was 4 weeks, with several instances reflecting this duration. And on the other hand, the physical component predominantly lasts for about 1 week for the students going to travel in the country of the hosting institution. You can see in the actual report all these very well detailed, so it's of interest for you to go there and have more information. Here I'm just showing some quick highlights. So for the purpose of the SBM components, usually the online components of the blended mobility activities, well, they served different purposes. A significant portion was dedicated to knowledge sharing and lectures, emphasizing the importance of theoretical understanding. That means just giving lectures, not a lot of interaction. Preparation and post-processing activities were also prevalent, indicating that the online component can play a crucial role in setting the stage for the physical component and ensuring also perhaps that the learning outcomes after the physical meetings are valid, continue. The physical components of the student blended mobility emphasized more of an active, hands-on, immersive experience. A significant portion was dedicated to lectures and knowledge sharing, but much more interactive than the online component. However, the physical setting also allowed for more, as I said, interactive and immersive experience, and participants were more able to interact and engage with the experts, the teachers, and their peers. Practical activities as well, and hands-on experience were a major highlight, and the immersion and the cultural experience was also a very big part of mobilities for students in general, and a unique opportunity of the physical component in terms of getting a deep dive into the different academic, institutional, and cultural environments. For the evaluation of the SBM, in the graph, okay, that's big enough. In the graph, you can see the percentages of the, you cannot see the percentages, they should be there, but it doesn't matter. You can find everything in the final report, in the first report. So you can see how respondents indicated if their SBM was assessed, but I can give you the information on the how. So most respondents reported that it was assessed by the quality assurance either at the central or at the faculty level. So, and that was similar percentages more or less. It was informally assessed, it was another option, or it was assessed also by an alliance project team in case of the European University Alliances, but also by blended mobility management teams for those that they have effective teams like this within their institutions. When it comes to the actual feedback that the respondents received, students concerned with student blended mobility tends to focus on scheduling and time management, as well as the funding of the physical component in terms of if it's enough or if it's not enough. For the recognition of the student blended mobility, as you can see in the graph, a primary way of recognition was through ECTS, and 3 is the minimum, as you all know, amount required, and usually attributed for BIPs, for example. Respondents mentioned that usually there were no differences in the recognition process between SPM and traditional mobility, so it was the same process followed within the university, and the two components were recognized as one, so there was no separate ECTS for the online component and for the in-person physical component to highlight the workload of the online component and the workload of the physical component. In some cases, though, recognition of credits was not ensured for non-mobile students. These are the local students for a BIP. When the host institution is welcoming students, they also involve local students. So for them, this can be problematic, where only the mobile, because the mobile component is usually recognized for the students participating in BIPs. So these are very general challenges that we identified through the first part of the work that we did about setting up and implementing blended mobility activities, and that basically reflects the complexities of merging the online and the physical learning experience. A prominent challenge revolved around the student engagement and participation, because ensuring consistent participation, motivation, and access to the necessary tools like mobile phones, tablets, stable internet connection, these are crucial. The shift from traditional to blended learning requires students also to adapt, and not are all equally prepared to do so or are inclined. Technical and difficulty challenges and digital challenges that highlighted the importance to have a robust digital infrastructure within the universities. Stable internet again, user-friendly platforms, and digital training are essential for a seamless execution of blended mobility. Financial and administrative issues, that is a big one. That means that we need a clear communication, understanding of the different administrative efforts and culture, and adequate funding as well for SPM. There's a need to have streamlined processes and better collaboration between the institutions and better funding, more adequate funding. Organizational and logistical challenges point to intricacies of coordinating between different institutions. And this time, for example, for BIPs, we're not talking about 2 institutions, we're talking about 3 institutions. So it further complicates things. And different schedules. So it requires planning and flexibility. Cultural and interpersonal differences that bring to light nuances of working with diverse groups. Well, this is also a reality of typical mobility, but understanding and reflecting different teaching methods, languages, and student maturity levels is very important. And lastly, content and pedagogical challenges suggested that educators need to be agile and ready to adapt in the difference of the blended learning delivery based on the evolving dynamics of a blended environment. But we also identified some key factors of success from this first research. And we can see that blended mobility offers a lot of opportunities for higher education institutions, for students, for all the stakeholders, but they do not come also without challenges, as mentioned. So the success focuses on several interconnected pillars. First and foremost was the very good planning and preparation. Emphasis should be on well-prepared curriculum that is very well designed for the blended learning experience, detailed scheduling and early engagement also with the students. This is further complemented by the need for students to be also prepared to participate in the blended learning environment. So perhaps training for them as well, not just for the staff. Engagement and motivation, they're critical drivers. The lecturers' enthusiasm and interest in this type of blended delivery of learning and teaching, combined with internationalization in general, can serve as a catalyst for student participation and engagement. Effective communication from the initial stages of advertising and organizing a BIP or an SPM to real-time interactions with the students, collaborating closely with lecturers, partners, make sure that there is a rich and diverse learning experience. And the base of any successful program, as I already said, is support and resources. So continuous academic guidance coupled with financial and organizational backing will make sure that students and educators can have the necessary tools to succeed. And last but not least is the pedagogy and the assignments. They need to be structured activities, regular follow-ups, and a blend of technological and pedagogical training that ensure that students will remain aligned with the course objectives, and the online component will be more than just a prep tool for just a couple of times before students meet in person. So, in order to better understand, as I already mentioned, the wide range of blended mobility activities throughout Europe, we tried to develop a working typology of blended mobility. Again, this is a working typology because things evolve, so you cannot take this as a final table that you can base your work moving forward, but it can give you an early guidance on how you can proceed. And what we did is that we set on 5 analytical paths. It's important to highlight that this is not exhaustive, as I said, nor prescriptive. So it's an analytical effort to make sense of the diversity. It helps understand how student-blended mobility is structured today, what patterns exist, and where innovation is currently emerging. So across the 5 paths, we have distinguished among different formats that are most commonly used, and also formats that are still emerging in their very early days. So the path 1, and the most common one, is BIPs, Blended Intensive Programs. It's the most widespread format under the Erasmus Plus funding, with several emerging variations in terms of sequencing of how when you do the online component and the physical component. Second is the blended summer school of study tours that some of them also use funding of BIPs to deliver. And it's most commonly structured with the online preparation before physical mobility, but it also increasingly including follow-up. The third one is blended mobility for study, but this is an individual model where online and the physical study components are combined. This is not very widespread yet, and unfortunately we did not have a lot of case studies about this kind of individual blended mobility. We're very much looking forward to exploring this more in the future. Blended mobility for training, which is an emerging area as well, combining online preparation with physical placements for work for students, and blended joint programs that are a fully integrated long-term model that remains emergent but highly promising in light as well of the European University Alliances. So this typology provides a conceptual map rather than a fixed classification, and it shows the diversity. I'm going to drink some water and I'm going to let you look at it. Okay. So, I'm thinking, because of the time, I'm not going to read this, but these are some testimonials from our focus groups, so the qualitative aspects that we managed to cover, about the sequence of components, how they matter, the coordination efforts behind blended mobility, the engagement and how you can increase engagement for students, information about inclusion and how SBM can support inclusion, and credit recognition. So have a quick look, and then again, I will ask my colleague Caroline to make sure we send all these presentations after. So you will, and also this information are also within the report, so you can access it already. Okay, next. So, for finishing, this was the work package 2. And then we had to work on the work package 3. And to deepen our understanding of what quality meant in the context of student-blended mobility, what we decided to do was to carry out a mini Delphi process. So the idea behind the mini Delphi was to bring together the voices of key stakeholders who are directly involved or affected from blended mobility. So we consulted administrative staff, obviously, academic teaching staff, students, quality assurance agencies, and national or Erasmus Plus funding bodies. And instead of a one-off consultation bringing all of these voices together, which would be difficult, we did several different consultations, and this was an iterative process. So we organized 5 online sessions, some of them split into 2 parts, to allow us time for reflection and concrete dialogue with these people. Each session included up to 6 carefully selected participants to make sure everyone contribute meaningfully in these sessions. We will record, transcribe them, and summarize them, and each round fed to the next one, as mentioned earlier. So the goal was not only to gather opinions, but also to identify common themes, areas of divergence, and the core elements that stakeholders consider essential for the high-quality aspect of the student blended mobility. The process basically formed a very crucial bridge between the empirical finds of our work in Work Package 2 and the development of our EHG online framework in Work Package 4, which is the last deliverable. Okay, some main findings. Of course, there are much more, but I'm going to go through some main findings for you based on the different stakeholder groups. Hi. So, administrative perspective. The admin people highlighted funding complexity, as mentioned again and again and again, as one of the main challenges, particularly the mismatch between the Erasmus Plus funds and the real needs of organizing the student blended mobility. They also emphasized the administrative burden, especially when coordinating partners, calendars, and system, and what is required in terms of reporting from the European Commission. The workload of staff was often underestimated and undervalued, even though blended mobility requires significant preparation because of the blended component and coordination. And finally, they pointed out some gaps in the recognition system and uneven digital readiness within the institutions. The pedagogical staff or teaching staff, they stressed the need for training for themselves in the online pedagogy. I'm very happy we have a speaker today here who knows about instructional design, and we'll have here in one of the panel later, which is not the norm in some countries, not the norm in some other countries. So managing also intercultural groups online and maintaining engagement, these all require skills that not all of the teaching professionals have or had the opportunity to develop so far. So they also noted that the online component demands substantial preparation time, which is rarely acknowledged or compensated. And they also noted that they need stronger support and recognition from their institutions about their work within delivering student blended mobility. The student perspective, students consistently express the need for clearer expectations. They want transparency about the workload, timelines, and recognition. They highlighted the importance of cultural preparation and digital support, especially for those with lower prior experience in online learning, and also told us that the online component can feel less valued or less engaging for them. It is not well facilitated, and that interaction and community building are basically lacking before you actually go to the physical component. The QA agencies, the quality assurance agencies, and we have a couple here in the room today, and the funders, we also have a couple of them here today. They acknowledge that existing quality assurance frameworks are not yet adapted to student blended mobility. They call for more guidance, standardization, and shared terminology. And the funders, including Erasmus Plus national agencies, also see the potential of student blended mobility, but also emphasize that there is a need for clearer models, especially regarding recognition and quality assurance. In short, the mini Delphi sessions confirm that while student blended mobility holds enormous promise, it also requires clear structures, appropriate support, and quality frameworks, which is exactly what the HIBLend wants to propose. Okay, another interesting part. So part of our work in Work Package 3 was to try to align what we do and our work with the European standards and guidelines for quality assurance. The ESG, the 2015 one, not the recently being worked ones that will be changed by 2027, I heard yesterday. So I'm going to go through all of the ESGs and their connection to SBM. So for the ESG 1.1, which is the policy for quality assurance, institutions should explicitly include blended mobility in their internal quality assurance policies. This means clarifying the roles and responsibility, governance, and how blended mobility fits into the institution's broader vision for internationalization and digital learning. The ESG 1.2, the design and approval of programs. This is about designing blended mobility with clear learning outcomes, not just an ad hoc experience. And the learning outcomes should cover both the online and the physical component. Courses must be co-designed between partners to see that the two components align and reinforce one another, not two separate experiences. The ESG 1.3, which is the student-centered learning, teaching and assessment, well, the focus here is on pedagogy, as you can understand, and blended mobility requires interactive, collaborative, and online learning. It's not just content delivery, not just, empty course giving, lecturing. So assessment methods must reflect also the blended nature of the course. The 1.4, which is about student admission, progression, recognition, and certification. The blended mobility should be accessible with transparent selection criteria. And very importantly, institutions must provide fair and consistent recognition for both the online and the on-site physical elements, ensuring that blended mobility students are treated not differently from other students. The ESG 1.5, which is the teaching staff, it's about providing support to them, training, and also recognition for their work. So online facilitation, intercultural group management, and blended pedagogy require new skills, and institutions need to acknowledge the workload that comes with designing and delivering SBM. And now we're going to the following. The ESG 1.6, which is the learning resources and student support. Blended mobility cannot function without solid infrastructure, so this includes accessible digital tools, reliable platforms, and structured academic, technical, cultural, and linguistic support for students. The 1.7, which is the information management, we need data on student engagement, participation, outcomes, and mobility flows. The information is crucial for improving the design and delivering of blended mobility and for tracking its impact over time. The 1.8, which is the public information, we all know transparency is essential, so students and staff must have clear and accessible information online about the structure of the SBM, workload, recognition, learning outcomes, assessment methods, and sequencing of the online and physical part. The 1.9, which is about ongoing monitoring and periodic review, like any program, blended mobility must be monitored and reviewed regularly. You will see later in the framework we provide a review process throughout, not just at the end. And feedback from students, staff, and partners should be embedded into the program improvement and development. And finally, the 1.10, which is the cyclical external quality assurance. National QA agencies could and need perhaps to incorporate blended mobility into their external reviews. This is still a very emerging area though, but it's crucial for long-term sustainability of this kind of formats and making sure that they are recognized and supported at system level. So altogether, mapping the student blended mobility against the ESG allowed us to build the framework that's going to follow now, that is only not practical, but also aligned with ESGs and existing institutional processes. And I'm going to let you have a quick look here while I drink some water again. Okay. I have, don't worry, I mean, you can see this, but I also have detailed slides after as well. So with all this evidence that we gathered, the survey, the focus groups, the testimonials, the mini Delphi consultations, we were able to build a comprehensive framework for student blended mobility, which is designed to support universities in designing, implementing, and evaluating student blended mobility. It draws directly from institutional experience, stakeholder consultation, and it also embeds various good practice examples from actual institutions and other organizations. So I will work through with you with all the different steps, and then my colleagues are also going to showcase the digital component of this framework. Okay, so the first part of the HIBLend framework looks at the strategic considerations, which is also something that differentiates this framework from all the other existing tools out there, because we also focus on how to embed student-blended mobility within the strategy of institution. The institutional foundations, if you want to call it like that. So the stage one, which is mapping strategic relevance and importance, in this stage, institutions need to reflect on how blended mobility aligns with their broader current strategies: internationalization, sustainability, digitalization. Thank you, 10 minutes, I saw it. So this includes, yes, digitalization, inclusion, and sustainability. Blended mobility can support a wide range of goals, widening participation, reducing barriers to mobility, increasing flexibility, etc. So this stage is about making those connections explicit and identifying what blended mobility can add in terms of most value. The stage two, which is assessing institutional readiness in terms of delivering and feasibility. So once the potential is clear, we have this. The next steps is try to assess whether the institution can indeed do it. This would involve reviewing the digital infrastructure of the institution and accessibility, the staff capacity, experience, and motivation, the students' digital skills and readiness, funding possibilities and constraints, and any other structural or administrative barriers that need to be addressed. The goal here is to give a more realistic picture of what the institutions can deliver and what they need to strengthen before they move forward. The next stage is formulating the institutional SBM goals. At this stage, institution needs to decide clear and measurable objectives for the blended mobility they want to offer. What do they want to achieve? Which programs they want to participate and include in SBM? What target groups they're aiming to support within their institutions? Is it an inclusion thing? Is it a step for a longer-term mobility, etc.? This stage also includes adapting internal quality assurance policies, incorporating blended mobility, and as well as recognition policies for both students and staff to be updated for blended mobility to be treated consistently and fairly. And the final stage, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot one, and institutions must plan to recognize the additional workload associated with designing and coordinating blended mobility formats. And the stage 4, which is to prepare the 3-phase implementation that follows after, is put in place the structure and the people needed to run student blended mobility effectively. An institution needs to identify key actors, so international office staff, program coordinators, instructional designers where available, IT support and quality assurance officers within the institutions, and establish a clear division of roles. This stage also includes providing targeted training for staff, especially in digital pedagogy and blended learning design, and developing an internal monitoring and evaluation approach. Within the framework, we also have a table providing guidance about what kind of roles you can expect to be involved in student blended mobility. I have not included it here because of time constraints and because I've been talking for 30 minutes already, but you can see it in the report and on the website. Okay, so following, once the strategic foundations have been laid and put in place, we need to move into the first operational phase of the framework, which is the pre-implementation phase, the design and setup. What we found throughout the project is that a strong preparation, as I said, reduces almost most of the risks that institutions typically encounter with delivering SBM. So the institution need to choose the type of blended mobility they want to run, and for this reason the pathways that we discussed earlier can help you. or you can also create your own pathway. That's also very fine. And identify also the participating actors. This choice will influence eligibility, funding possibilities and options, and how the activity integrates into the curricula. Funding must be secured early on, whether through Erasmus+, but there are also national schemes that support blended mobility. Also institutional budgets, if you want to. And partnerships with external organizations is also a possibility. A core step is also updating or confirming interinstitutional agreements and aligning them as well with blended mobility, including the academic recognition arrangements. Partners should also engage in joint course design, defining the learning outcomes for both the online and the physical component. And institutions need to also plan timelines, carefully considering the different academic calendars. We all know some institutions in the north and in the south have extremely different academic calendars when it comes to vacation time. So yeah, this should be noted. From a student perspective, this phase covers clear public information, so have everything publicly available on the website, and also have transparent selection criteria for the students, and ensuring accessibility, both digital and physical for the physical component. And finally, very important, a contingency plan is needed for technical or logistical disruptions, particularly for the online component. As you know, we also are hybrid today. I hope everything is going well with our online audience. I will check the tablet very soon. The next one is the implementation phase, which is the delivery and support, where the blended mobility activity is actually being done. This is the moment where the planning meets the practice and where the student's experience is shaped most directly. We begin with a structured orientation for both students and staff, including academic expectations, intercultural guidance, and technical onboarding and clear expectations of how the online and the physical component are going to fit together. In terms of pedagogy, blended mobility works best when it uses active and collaborative methods, project-based learning, case studies, co-creation tasks, etc. The actual framework also provides guidance on tools that you can use and different learning methods, teaching methods, so have a look there. Digital collaboration tools play an important role. Platforms, as I said, you can find them on the framework. Equally important is building an inclusive and intercultural learning environment for the students. So small mixed groups, structured interaction, guided reflection time, and activities, they help students form relationships and feel included and engage more deeply already from the online component. Institutions should also ensure smooth coordination between teaching teams, because the teaching teams should also collaborate. And set information channels and regular check-ins make a big difference in this perspective. And throughout the implementation phase, students need real-time academic support and technical support, especially during the online activities or intensive physical sessions. Finally, a good blended mobility, or any mobility for that matter, should include a mid-course evaluation, whether through surveys, reflection logs, or short debrief meetings with teachers and students. And this will allow the team to make immediate adjustments and improve the experience while it's still ongoing. And I'm almost done, I swear. The final phase of the framework is the post-implementation phase, which is essential for ensuring that the blended mobility activity has a lasting impact and continues to be improved throughout the time. So the first priority is the credit recognition. As you know, students must receive full and transparent recognition, both the online and the physical components, and this should apply equally to incoming and also local students, as mentioned earlier. Clear documentation, transcript, diploma supplements, etc., can help make this recognition visible and portable. Just as important, though, is also recognizing the teaching and administrative staff work, because it is considerable work. So blended mobility should be formally recognized in appraisal systems, workload models, professional development pathways. That depends on its university and the processes they have within. Next is evaluation, and this includes collective feedback from student and staff, after the end of the blended mobility and reviewing whether the intended learning outcomes were achieved indeed. Evaluation at this stage goes beyond satisfaction, but also examines the coherence of the learning design, the effectiveness of the collaboration, the alignment of the online and the physical components. And once the data is collected, the most important thing is to analyze this data to improve future iteration of the SBM, update internal guidelines and support systems, strengthen the QA policy within the institution, and where relevant, feed insights into external quality assurance processes. In other words, the post-implementation phase closes the loop. You can imagine it as a round process. And it ensures that every blended mobility activity not only benefits its participants, but also contributes to institutional learning and long-term quality development. And yes, I'm done. Now it's time. I'm really sorry I went a little bit over time, but because I know that we have some time to steal from your session, I will still try to see if there are any questions in the room, first of all. I don't know how to work this. Okay, I found. Will the slides from this presentation be made available? Oh, yeah, okay. I see Caroline has replied. Yes, everything's going to become available right after the session, but keep in mind everything is on the website and in a very interactive digital tool that my colleagues will also share, so you can see everything there. Any questions in the room? We also have the coffee break, so if you feel shy, come and find me at the coffee break. Okay, fair enough. Thank you very much. And now I invite my colleagues Deborah and Salome to do the interactive presentation.
All right, can you hear us well? Yes? Perfect. Okay. First of all, thank you, Angeliki, for the very nice introduction and explanation of everything within the project, and to Rina for the welcoming words, and also for the coordination of the whole project, so thank you. So, I'm Salome Dermati. I'm the Policy and Research Officer at the European University Foundation, based in Brussels, and together with my colleague Deborah from the Communications Department, we're going to guide you through this very interactive and visually engaging way that we put together this toolbox for blended mobility. So in a nutshell, what we try to do is basically translate all the results, all the knowledge that fed into the toolbox and into the framework into a toolbox so that you can interact with it online. So as you can see from the general picture, from the bird's eye view, basically you have the 4 phases at the top. Of course, they correspond to the 4 phases that Angeliki presented before. And then at the top, at the bottom, you have the heat map and the resources that Deborah will explain. So overall, there are different interactive elements or buttons or items that you can use. So, for example, we have in this globe icon that leads you to the website of the HIBLend project, and here the LinkedIn icon connects to the community of practitioners that we've also developed in the context of this project. At the very top, again, we're going to start with the 4 phases. So you can start with the strategic considerations, and you can click through this arrow button, which leads you to this specific page, microsite dedicated to explaining at the very top what this phase is about, and then giving specific action points or good practices that correspond and align with this phase. So, for example, here we have mapping strategic relevance, of course, as Angeliki mentioned, or preparation for the 3-phase implementation. But you also have the plus buttons, and again, that is another way to interact with it and find more information. So you can click through the different buttons here, and then you have even more recommendations or action items that Angeliki just presented before. So again, very intuitive and very guided process that we wanted to visualize and translate all the results and the knowledge from the framework in a more engaging way. It's also very easy to navigate through the different phases. So now, of course, we started with the first stage, but there's also this next arrow here when And by clicking it, you basically go through the next page, which is the pre-implementation phase. And again, similar structure of a short description at the top. And again, just below it, you find more examples of the action points and how they align with the ESGs. So again, when it came to the visualization and the creation of this toolbox, we very much followed and wanted to echo the structure of the framework. So every phase has a description, has a name, and then there's alignments and clear demonstration with the different ESGs. So this is, again, the pre-implementation phase. We can move forward to the implementation phase, even more examples. And then lastly, but not least, the post-implementation phase. So you can slide through one stage to another. You can also go back and basically navigate the framework in a more concise way. So this is another point that I wanted to raise here. The toolbox that we prepared is complementary and a shorter version of the framework model that Angeliki presented before in the format of a PDF report. So if you want more information, more examples, more footnotes, more background knowledge, more methodology, etc., you can, of course, direct yourselves to the actual framework model. But if you want a more concise, clear, and again, engaging format or design, you can very much experiment and get exposed and try to get accustomed to the toolbox. So very quickly, these are the 4 phases.
So the framework and the different phases are like the first pillar, let's say, of the toolbox. The second pillar is the heat map. So the heat map, the intended goal was really to have a visual representation, putting all the pieces together in a European, let's say, overview of the best practices that where we came up across throughout the different surveys, focus groups, mini Delphi that Angeliki was mentioning during her presentation. And the idea is really to have different elements that organization, institutions, they can have as an inspiration also. So you can navigate through the heat map also through the different pins that you see. You see already the Belgium is quite popular in terms of good practices and best practices. And the way that we structured the, let's say, the visual representation of the good practices is to always reconnect to the stage of the framework and to the relevant ESGs. So you will see, for example, that if I open this pin, you will see that it reconnects to the 4th stage, and then down below you have the relevant ESG, and in this case it's 1.9. You probably won't be able to see it because it's very tiny. And we also wanted to provide diversified, also a way to represent the cases, or not just go with the plain simple text, because it could be like a little bit dull if you always have to read some text, but we wanted also to keep it a little bit diverse. And in this case, for example, during the latest EIE in Gothenburg, there was this very interesting poster that was also presented, and we managed to get in contact with the Darmstadt University of Applied Sciences, and they were also kind enough to share their poster with us, and we integrated it into the heat map. Another diverse format that we used was, for example, in the case of University of Antwerp, and actually I also have to say that Vance Gisels is also here, so you will have the opportunity to hear him live, not just through the video interview that we'd had with him, and he was also kind enough to, let's say, to present and, let's say, lend his face to the case of Antwerp University, so you will also have the opportunity to really read some extracts from the interviews and the recording that we had with him. And also in this case, you see the stage that it reconnects to and the relevant ESG. Another element is, for example, here, like a simple text. So we also decided to introduce some basic elements, because why not? And you will always, regardless of the different case and good practices, there will always be a link that reconnects directly to the, let's say, official resource from, for example, in this case, Ulysses Alliance, but like also other institutions and universities. One disclaimer, of course, this heat map and, let's say, exercise is in no way meant to be exhaustive. There's many more good examples that for sure we're not really aware of, but actually this could be like a call to action for all of you. If you know of any good practices that you feel are deserving also to be included into the heat map, you can of course always join the LinkedIn community that we have created, the Blend Mobility practitioners, and add and share, you know, the good practices to keep the conversation going there. The heat map, other than being integrated into the toolbox, is also directly accessible on the homepage of the HIBLend website. And moving forward, we have the last pillar of the toolbox, which consists of other resources that we thought would be also quite useful and interesting to include into this digital toolbox. Earlier, Angeliki was mentioning and referring to some of the challenges that emerged during the research, let's say, activities, the surveys and whatnot, like, for example, the difficulties in providing or like finding good learning platforms, or like engaging with the students. So we try to also support by providing some of the tools and platforms and resources that could also be useful for setting up or like during the operational process of the blended mobility. So by also interacting with the different sections, you will see that each of the tool is also hyperlinked, so you will be directly directed towards the website, and there is a short description on how, if you're not familiar with the tool, how you could use it, what's the potential. So the idea is really like to use it as a way to integrate and use any of the tools that are present. And the majority of those are for free, so of course there's always the possibility to use them all, and they're freely accessible. But I mean, of course, some of them, maybe the features are quite restricted, so it would need to be subscription based. Going back to the main page, one last thing that I think would like to mention before opening the floor to the questions, in case there's any. Going back to the LinkedIn community of practice, we also just wanted to mention that the toolbox will also be presented there in the next couple of months. So we will have a LinkedIn Live on the 19th of January, and another one on the 4th of February. So for any of the colleagues that couldn't be with you or couldn't join today, either online or in person, if you know of anyone who's really interesting and should be aware of the existence of this tool, please spread the word, let them know, invite them also to join the LinkedIn community, and we will wait also for them on January and February. That's it for us. If there's any questions regarding, I don't know, the conception of the tool or anything, I think we should.
Yes. Before addressing some of the questions, I would like to add a couple of things. That the Toolbox is hosted on Genially, so it's one of the resources that we included in this practical tools box. We had previous experience with it in another project, and we really wanted to again experiment with it a bit more. It is very intuitive, very user-friendly. It has access to a lot of free templates. You can import different documents. You can share, download, embed it. As Deborah mentioned, you can find it already on the website of the HIBLend project that we presented before. But overall has other benefits. You can also invite colleagues to collaborate with it. It's very practical to use and has a lot of different interactions, animations, effects as well. And also for the heat map, and also kind of reflecting a question, some of the criteria that we used when collecting these examples, it was a long process that basically started with the beginning of the project. So again, through the focus groups, through different conferences and workshops or hackathons, through the mini Delphi sessions, through also personal contacts, through the national agencies, through the universities, we had been already collecting some of those examples, but we were always looking for something that was scalable, of course, impactful, very specific, very leading to the enhancement of the personal, professional, but also institutional levels, be it in terms of skills development, capacity building, networks, etc. And again, very much thinking of how we can translate that and fit it and align it with the 4 stages of the framework and also with the ESGs as well. So these were some of the criteria that we used, and it is for higher education. So I saw a question online whether it could also be for VET, but overall we were looking at higher education institutions for now. Yes. And I think there was another similar question that was just uploaded of what were the different variables or things that we took into account for compiling the list. I assume it's the list of the heat map. So again, thinking of practices that can be replicable, that are sustainable, that promote and really foster and enhance the quality of the delivery, the implementation, and also the assessment of different models of SBM. And something else that we took into consideration was the geographic representation. So of course we do have a lot of case studies from Belgium, and we're very grateful to everyone who contributed. But we also did try to cover different countries, different areas, different regions, different sizes of universities as well. So we tried our best to capture as many and as good quality examples as we could. But it was a long process that started already before the summer. In spring and summer of 2025. But of course, non-exhaustive. So again, the call to action for you and for your colleagues is to join the community on LinkedIn and get in touch with us and share the good practice that you know of, that you have implemented, or your friends or your colleagues. So we're very much looking forward to broadening this community. Do we have any more questions also from the audience? In the room? Just maybe for the microphone, 1 second, Eva. Yes, so that the online participants can hear you. I'm sure you have something very interesting to add.
No, I just wanted to say publicly, to compliment you. This is really wonderful, because I think the report is very interesting, but I know a lot of people won't read it. This is a really good way in, and I really like how comprehensive it is and how easily manageable. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Eva. We have one more comment in the room from Violetta. No, Bozidar, sorry.
Thank you very much. It's very much connected to what was said already regarding the heat map and the toolbox. I'm just curious if I'm interested in any of those examples of good practices. Are there available contacts? Because it's good to know the example, but if I need to consult someone, is there a contact where I can ask questions?
Thank you for the question. I would say a lot of the contributors are here in the room today, so maybe we can start there. And again, thank you very much to everyone who contributed to this heat map. Then you do have hyperlinks, and again, we always reference the original source, so there's always going to be a website or another document or something else directly from the institutions to go back to, even if you don't see the specific information in the heat map. And then another way that you can find more information is, again, the framework model, because what we showed now is just a short summary, like a recap of the case study, of the good practice, but an extended version and more context of each individual case study is included in the framework model that Angeliki talked about before. So if you're missing something, you can also refer to the framework model, right? Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes, Božidar.
Yeah, good morning. Božidar from Slovenia National Agency for Erasmus+. Thank you for the presentation and thank you for your work. I think you deserve a commend on what you've come up with, especially with the toolbox, and maybe suggestion also if you'll have some time to improve things. I think it will be very valuable and useful to universities or institutions if you put it in a form of an application or like a survey. So they go step by step, filling in the things that need to be prepared for the short blended mobility. And then in the end, it creates like a checklist. So this is done, this is not done, this is still not complete. And then in the end, they have like all the content there in the final output, maybe.
Excellent suggestion. I think we're gonna take a note of this. As the project is ending in December, I still think it's important to collect this feedback, and we can integrate it. So maybe we'll have a talk with our consortium later, but thank you. Yes. We are almost right on time, but before we go into the coffee break, we would just like to remind you of the 2 webinars that will be hosted on our LinkedIn community of practice. So as Deborah mentioned, the first one is on the 19th of January at around lunchtime. We're still deciding on the day. And the next one will be on the 4th of February. So it's a very short, half an hour, very intense but concrete and concise webinar. We're going to, again, go through the toolbox, the framework model. So for those colleagues who could not attend today, or maybe you're missing some information, you have more questions, feel free to join the community of practice. It's called Blended Mobility Practitioners, that's the name. So you can find it, and maybe we can share the link online for the participants. But we'll be sure to remind you later in the day. So this is the last point from our side, I think. If there's no more objections or comments, we'll let, yes. Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you very much, Deborah. Thank you, Salome, and everyone, Irina, Angeliki, for presenting the outcomes of the project and this very useful toolbox. We're now going to head into our coffee break. So we will take a 30-minute break from 11 to 11:30. And then we will resume the conference. In particular, we will resume the discussion with our first panel discussion. So feel free to rest a bit and get a coffee in the room down there. And we invite you to be back a few minutes beforehand, so around 11:25 to resume. Thank you very much.